For 7 years, Republicans have been promising the American people that we would repeal Obamacare. And the American people are entirely justified in saying any politician who told me that and voted the other way didn't tell me the truth. They lied to me. No party can remain in power by lying to the American people.
That's 6 months into the most devastating victory for the Republican Party in 100 years. So much power, so many opportunities. The nation has finally decided that we're the right side.
You know, I realize that was an accident, but that phrase was fantastic. The most devastating victory. I mean, devastating to whom?
Yeah,
only
that's a good
time will
question.
tell. The other thing that makes me excited is evidently Ted Cruz has broken out his sad voice. It's good to hear that again.
Did you hear
Ted Cruz, who I agree with on everything and find utterly inauthentic.
Did you hear Lindsey Graham yesterday when he said he voted yes? He said, I'll vote for this only because I have the assurances from Paul Ryan that this will not be.
This will never become law.
This will not become law. They will change it. If I thought it would become law, I would vote no. So there's a possibility that John McCain just didn't believe Paul Ryan and thought it might become law. So who knows? That's
what I'm hearing from my sources, Jack. But please, let's welcome another voice into the fray, that of Craig Gottwals. Craig, the Obamacare lawyer. He is a benefits and healthcare expert. If you need help straightening out your company, et cetera, go to CraigBenefit-Revolution.com. Craig, welcome, sir.
Good morning, guys.
Let me tell you this, and I have a very good grasp on what can and should be said on the air and what should not. At some point, when you no longer are a responsible and sober attorney and benefits expert and want to just go pure commentator, what you were texting us last night was hilarious, and you need to do that, but you got to learn how to do it sober.
No, we just got to keep that in the long-term plan here, gentlemen.
Yeah, certainly. So anyway, Craig, what in God's name happened last night?
Well, as a reset, remember 7 years ago we gave this entitlement away, a healthcare entitlement to able-bodied Americans to help them buy healthcare.
Up to 4 times the poverty level or something like that.
That's right. We took Medicaid, which was originally intended to help the bottom 2% of society, and we've blown it up to 20 to 30%, depending upon your state. And we've given subsidy dollars to families making up to $100,000 a year to buy health care. That was 7 years ago. Republicans screamed that we needed to repeal every word of it. Very quickly, they changed.
Well, and it was to a large extent the birth of the Tea Party movement. It was the 2010 midterm. It was the 2012 congressional. It was the 2014 midterms. It was huge.
And it took almost no time at all for them to change repeal to repeal and replace, because they quickly realized, we're losing the spine to get rid of a handout. And last night, really, honestly, I think was the bare minimum that could have been done to say that you're actually repealing even part of Obamacare, because last night's bill, guys, it was only 8 pages. And all it did was repeal the individual mandate, which overwhelmingly America does not like. That's the one that says you got to buy health insurance or we're going to fine you individually. It repealed temporarily. It actually just sunsetted the employer mandate to 2025, which is pretty spineless in and of itself. They didn't even have the guts to say get rid of it. They said, we'll get rid of it until 2025. So that's the one that tells employers they need to buy health care. And it also would have eliminated the most unpopular tax in Obamacare, and that's the medical device tax. That's the one that's driving up the cost for manufacturers that make these medical devices and driving that business overseas. It would have only sunset that one for 3 years until 2020. And then it would have done a couple other things that would have grown HSAs, allowed you to. All
right. Well, it's dead, so we don't need to break it down that thoroughly. But
so that was it. The minimum. That's really the minimum you can do, I think. And you could not get 51 senators to agree to do that. So I don't know where that leaves us, other than a slow march towards socialism, which will be a quicker march towards socialism as these exchanges continue to falter.
An interesting thing did happen last night that somebody got up there for a vote, the idea of going to just universal health care, just to government health care, socialized medicine. Actually put that to a vote yesterday, and it only got 4 votes. Am I right about that?
Oh.
Yeah, I don't know if it was 4 or 0. I thought almost everybody voted present, but
all the Democrats voted present.
Right.
That's right, because they were given universal health care by the Republicans and couldn't vote yes on it.
Yeah, it was a frustrated Republican who said, okay, fine, what do you stand for? Oh, I know what you stand for. Bernie Sanders has said he wants Medicare for all. So it wasn't just socialized medicine. It was let's put forth Medicare for all, specifically what Bernie Sanders has said he wants. And even Bernie voted present. And his analysis was, well, this is just a scam to embarrass us because we're not ready to, accept this yet as a party or whatever. But yeah, it didn't. I don't think it got any votes. It might have gotten a couple Republican cynical votes, but I don't think it got any Democratic votes.
So yeah, like Joe said, none of that stuff really means anything because everything failed. So where are we? Obamacare is the law of the land for the near future, and what does that mean for my the cost of health care for me and my family?
Well, the good news is for the overwhelming majority of Americans who still do get their health care at work, I don't see this vote last night really significantly changing that.
Right. Well, I was going to point out, we're talking about the individual market, period, at this point.
Right. So that's the other thing about last night's vote. Last night's vote wouldn't have changed subsidies, and it would not have changed Medicaid. So you're really looking at about 10 million Americans in the individual market. That's really all. When they were worried about this thing not becoming law last night, that's what they're worried about. They're worried about those people's premiums skyrocketing, and they probably would have skyrocketed an additional 20% next year under this change. But the reality is they're going to go up 20% anyway year after year under Obamacare. So really what last night did was if it would have passed, it would have been like health care by the sequestration, if you guys remember the sequestration.
Right.
It would have put a hammer in place to say, hey, guys, we need to get together over the next 3 months and really fix this, because if we don't, the 10 million people in the individual market are going to be thrown into a seriously topsy-turvy world.
Well, then wasn't John McCain right in taking, didn't he take a principled stand and saying this is not the way the Senate is supposed to make legislation? This isn't the way we do it. Let's go back to trying to do it the old way. Isn't that a fair way to look at it?
I think he is right in that principle, Jack, but my contention with that is that it's too easy for them to fall back on the status quo now, which is Obamacare. And if they do that, that individual market's going to erode into a death spiral anyway. It's just going to take about 7 years instead of 1.
So listen, we are so far into bizarro world here. You've got a measure that people voted for if they were promised it would never become law, just because it was something and would continue the discussion, move it into the House. You have virtually everybody lying like a maniac about what's in each bill, what's not in each bill. I heard stated by the lead anchor on MSNBC yesterday when somebody said, and under this proposal, 15 million people will have their insurance taken away. Well, no, many millions of those will just not buy insurance because they don't want it. So that's not taken away. They just don't want it. And they said, wow, and 20% premium increases, 20% higher than Obamacare would be, which is just completely untrue. It's just 20% higher than go on today. So it just, where are we? We're nowhere. We're lying at each other. We're voting for bizarro bills nobody wants. We got Bernie Sanders turning down universal care. This is no way to run a country.
Guys, that 16 million number is significant because, remember, the CBO was coming out and saying 22, 23, 24 million would, quote, lose their health care under all the iterations up till now. The 16 million number that came out last night simply says this. It says, okay, citizenry, if we still give you the Medicaid expansion as it's written, and we still give you all of the subsidy dollars that are in Obamacare, but we simply tell you, you don't have to buy it, 16 million of that 23, 24 million will choose not to buy it.
Right, and that's supposed to be a tragedy to me. Although I'll tell you what, listen,
it's that's 16 million people are liberated to allocate their resources as they see fit. I mean,
right.
but you'll never hear it presented that way on any news media, not even Fox, because they don't have the spine to advocate individual liberties.
It's no. Oh my God, no, they have no idea. It's just that there is virtually nobody operating on the basis of principle at this point. There are a few exceptions. Craig Gottwals is on the line. What was I going to say? Oh, it is worth pointing out that there is a crisis in America because the average family in average health has gone from spending X percentage of their disposable income on health care to many multiples of that on health care. That is a problem. It is a societal problem. There are people in crisis, and people are looking to the federal government to do something about it. That, to me, is a legitimate plea to the government. Maybe the government says, yeah, we can do something. Maybe they say, no, we can't. You're on your own. Maybe they say the states ought to be doing that. But the huge issue we're running into here is that all of it must be run through the filter of the incredibly powerful and moneyed lobbyists in D.C. You go with the Rand Paul plan, where there's no such thing as an individual market anymore. I can start the Association of People Who Can't Get Insurance. That becomes a group plan, and you can't turn down anybody and blah, blah, blah. But nobody's interested in that because the lobbyists wouldn't be happy. Is that at least reasonably accurate?
No, Joe, that's very accurate. And one other thing, when people talk about healthcare prices going through the roof, what we have to understand is just between Medicare and Medicaid alone, that is nearly half, about 40% of the bills paid in our country on healthcare are just those two programs. The federal government sets the reimbursement rates on those programs, and they set them so incredibly low. Medicaid reimburses less than half of what your employer plan pays to doctors. So what happens is this problem just exacerbates over time. Every year that goes by, Medicare and Medicaid only inflate by like less than 1%. So doctors are then forced to cost shift onto our private plans, individual market, and employer plans. So even aside from Obamacare, even before Obamacare became law, this is the huge issue that's causing all of us who pay for health care to get priced out of the market. And what it's going to do is it's going to force a come-to-Jesus moment where even people like you and Jack are going to say, oh, God, just give me Medicare for all. I know it'll kind of suck for everybody, but at least I'll be able to afford it. Because so few people will accept the Rand Paul type approach in modern day America, where you've been given a handout for 7 years.
Well, and what was I going to say? Oh, my God, this is so cloudy. All right, never mind. It doesn't matter. It's just
nothing matters, Joe. Nothing matters.
Oh,
Joe.
no, that's what I was going to say. And one thing you've helped us understand, Craig, through the years is that virtually every aspect of the accounting for Medicare and Medicaid is fraudulent. It balances the budget based on, well, in 10 years, of course, we're going to cut the reimbursement rate by another 2/3. And so over 10 years, it has a balanced budget. When already the reimbursement rate's so low, no doctor will see you. And so they have this fanciful, future day when the healthcare is going to be practically free. So it's all lies.
If we were to do Medicare for all, the latest analysis of that was about a year ago, and that was Bernie Sanders wanted. He wanted Medicare for all. It would have increased the budget deficit over 10 years by $32 trillion.
Wow.
Just Medicare for all.
Wow.
And that was Bernie's plan that he was in favor of, $32 trillion. So we'd have to have enormous European-style taxes. And, if people want that country, I guess that's the one we're going to get.
Well, we'd have to literally more than double all taxes across the board to even just tread water under that program.
And then you'd troop off to the government and beg them for,
penicillin shot.
Right, exactly. Craig Gottwals, benefit-revolution.com, or drop us a note and we'll put you in touch because it's difficult to navigate these seas for companies and individuals these days. Craig, thanks a million.
Thank you, guys.
That was thoroughly depressing, but at least it was informative.
And that might be the last word on that, or I'd be fine if it was, because the repeal and replace Obamacare, even though you heard it 8 gazillion times over the last 4 elections, is over. It's gone. It's dead. It never happened. Couldn't get it off the ground. As Ted Cruz said, how could a party stay in power when you promise that for that long and then don't do anything?
They never bothered to get around to deciding whether they had a plan that they could all agree on. I don't think they can. I don't think they can. There's too big a spread between the libertarian wing and the I'm actually a Democrat wing.
Well, then don't walk out on stage and say, I'll vote to repeal and replace Obamacare on day one.
Are you calling for truth in politics?